extreme and polarizing people are. It's just mind-blowing. So typically I'm quite a soft-natured person, but I am quite direct with what I'll say to parents, but I'll do it in a loving way to try and help them acknowledge that, hey, is this you or is this actually the child? Where do we, it's not my job to be a psychologist, but obviously parents are met with this. I mean, you can average 5 to 6 emails a night. Some parents, as teachers, can.
Hello, Quanta folks, and welcome to another episode of Fark the Shood's Little Sister podcast, Alchemising Education. I am Jody from Quanta Mama.
And I'm Kerry from Quanti Mama.
She is Quanta Mama Kerry now because she got nude a couple of episodes ago. And we are very excited today because we're having another cherry popping breaking of the hymen moment, aren't we? Because we're having our first ever guest on AE, because I love an acronym. So Alchemising Education has its first guest. This woman, I think we could best describe her as a bit like Rob the dentist, where you don't see her face. She's going to be Lauren, the teacher, whose face you don't get to see either. Welcome, beautiful Lauren. We're going to call her Luscious Lauren because that is the right name for her. She's sometimes lovely, but mostly luscious. Welcome, Lauren.
Jody, that was just so lovely. What an incredible introduction for my first podcast ever.
Well, now everyone gets to actually paint their own picture of Luscious Lauren, so they can just listen to your dulcet tones. So today, good old Lauren is jumping in the deep end with us, and we are going to talk about an insider's perspective because Lauren actually is one of those real teachers rather than the armchair critics that Kez and I end up being often. We're really conscious about not bagging out school but calling it for what it is and raising the questions for what they are. But Lauren is actually working in the system, and she is in a really unique perspective because she has actually gone through a bunch of schools and has such a broad appreciation for what's happening and the nuances in the different schools. So we're going to dive in deep with that. Keza, you want to say anything?
No, I just think that this is such a beautiful opportunity, and thank Lauren for being here because, we obviously have had the parents' perspective for quite a while and sort of focusing on the children's needs from our perspective. But what we really love, because we value the role that teachers have, whether it be formal, informal, but there's so much going on for the teachers. Like there's a lot that they have to consider. Yeah. So that's what we'd really love to hear from Lauren is about, what's going on for you guys.
Yeah, and it's been like a pressure cooker, particularly the last few years. 2019, I think I sort of started out on my journey as far as exploring quite a few different schools. I think I've been exposed to maybe 15 different schools since 2019. Before then, I was mainly just in, 1 or 2 schools. No, let's say 3 schools. Sorry, I'm jumping around. I'm so new to this. But I think from 2019, I really have been in spaces that have allowed my wisdom to kind of burst open so much. I don't know what else to say. Where can I go from there? Help me with this.
Well, I think one of the things I want to say, because this will help put place you for our beautiful listenership out there, is that one thing that we really resonate with you is that you are a heart-led teacher. Yeah. So you're very conscious about emotions-led learning, children being able to learn to self-regulate, so that those all-important skills that I think are totally missing from the traditional enslavement system of the education system. I want to know what the FARK is going on in schools right now. Like from a snapshot point of view, what's your assessment? Because obviously teachers we know are overworked, and that's almost like something that you hear every time they're due to get a pay rise, right? So it gets caught up in this kind of political hyperbole all the time. But what does it really mean? What's happening for teachers in schools right now?
I just feel like there's just so much speed that there's no opportunity for teachers to really think for themselves. And so it's like a fast train. And so everyone's lost that heart-centred space. And I think, You know, I've always believed just within my heart that we're all here on a mission, our soul's here on a mission to do something pretty incredible in this world. And we need to be able to tap into that heart-centered space to be able to actually connect with others and help children and help ourselves be the best teachers we can be. And teachers just don't have that opportunity at the moment. There's just the rat race is real, and it's reflecting society and it's affecting our children. Our children really need to be able to not be stressed, because when you're stressed, you come out of your body and you're not able to hear yourself and what your passions actually are and all the things. And I know that a lot of schools are trying in different ways. There's no doubt that there's a lot of good things happening out there, but there's a lot of schools just, you know, paddling along but not really having any direction of where they're going. They're just being led by something outside of the school. And I have some big issues with that. Yeah.
So what sort of things is it that's actually making it hard for them in the system to actually put the kids' needs at the forefront of what they're
so
producing?
There's just a lot of testing going on. There's a lot of standardised expectations for teachers. You know, you can keep progressing up the ladder as far as money goes and everything. And so there's a lot of pressure to achieve. And, you know, you've got that from the system, but then you've also got a lot of parents that are expecting a lot from their individual children. And so teachers are pulled from all angles, you know, and then also we've got the variety of children we're being met with today. Individuality in the classroom is next level, much more than, say, 2006 was when I first went in to teaching, and it's just a completely different space now. You know, you've got every child's individual to a whole nother level now, which is beautiful because it means that we're needing to meet the needs of all the children. But for one teacher to meet the variety of individuals in a classroom is a really, really massive task. And schools are definitely finding their ways with aids and, you know, rotating around groups and, you know, just the continuity of improving their skills. But in doing so, there's just a lot of controls outside coming in that don't allow, to really connect in, I don't feel, with the individual child. I notice whenever I do tutoring, I think that's my happiest moment because you can actually feel the child and you can reach them in that moment the best that you can. But as a whole class is not one.
That's right.
Well,
I mean, I think what you're picking up on, which is what I find interesting, and again, we are not interested in recruiting people into anything, but we are interested in having meaningful conversations to see if we can fix this shit. Because at the moment, the product is broken. It's definitely faulty.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So something that you picked up there that was really interesting was how can a teacher be everything to everyone in the class? Like I struggle to be like everyone to my 4 kids, okay? So that's only 4. What's the standard size of a classroom now?
It's between 20 and 30 depending on the school. You have your occasional schools that'll have less, but I think the majority are sitting between 18 children and 30.
So I mean, it's few and far between. You'd probably have less than 20. So we'd say definitely we're looking at that many. So that's a lot of humans. And it's really funny because this morning Kerry and I were having a conversation with another mum whilst we were doing our fruit and veg shopping, and she was talking about neurodiverse, which is such a catchphrase now.
Yeah.
And we were saying, you know, it still sounds like you're othering children, and it's almost like it needs a rebranding exercise because I would argue that probably we're all neurodiverse in some way
it's
or
just
another.
Increasing, yeah. I mean, the school I was in last year had a good 14 out of 30 children that were diagnosed in that space or something close to it. Yeah, so it's slowly just becoming not just half the class, but more than half the class of children that you could question are in this space.
But it doesn't even count the kids that probably would get diagnosed if their parents were so inclined but don't, and they just regard their child as an individual. I mean, we've talked about before the fact that, my youngest and the way he swears could definitely be a candidate for a Tourette's diagnosis, if nothing else. Certainly a possible future criminal, who knows, right? This kid's got a personality on him. But I've resisted doing any labelling because I didn't know what I was going to do with the information. So I haven't done that. I didn't see the value. But I am really interested in, is it possible that with all these, we'll call them neurodiverse kids, but all these individuals, is it possible that the universe is bringing forth a crap ton of kids that will get diagnosed as being neurodivergent for us to allow the masses to break down the education system because it hasn't been fit for purpose for a long time?
Well, it's absolutely 100%, and they're also helping parents to transform.
Yeah.
And so the whole of our society is transforming because of our children. And, the children are helping us to connect with our emotions, helping us to work through blockages we've got. And if you've got teachers in the system that aren't aware of this, then it can be really, really damaging for these children. And it also depends on what type of school you've got your child in as well. Because, I think a lot of the private schools aren't, I shouldn't segregate and say certain, because there's always variety in every single school. But I feel like the different systems, the private and the public and then alternative schools, are really providing different responses to this whole thing. So I've had witness, from a few friends where they've put a child in a private school and they want to diagnose them quickly. I know that it's happened also in little spaces within our family space, but then you put them in a completely different alternative system and then they're not needing to be diagnosed at all. So it makes me really ponder what environment does to a child's ability to connect and be the best version of themselves.
Absolutely.
And it's homeschooling as well. All these different options that we have these days, even within homeschooling, you've got so many different choices. And I've witnessed children responding completely differently depending on how their parents can hold the space for their children and what programs they're providing, or whether they're not providing programs or whatever it is. And it's really fascinating. It's really fascinating to see how human beings respond to different environments.
Yeah, absolutely. We just we've got to, I think, just find a way to keep reimagining, because I think that everyone's beaten down by the current system. Parents are so busy. We've got kids that are super busy. So you're basically just running around doing a 3D life the whole time. Yeah. Swimming, dancing, karate,
Well, this is where stress gets involved way too much. And if you're finding your family's tipping over to the point of a stress response, then you're doing no justice. You think that you're providing all these extra things, but actually it tightens up the system more. The kids are not sleeping as well. There's more fights.
Yep.
That means that they're not able to perform at their highest potential.
And they're not learning.
They're not learning they're actually not learning anything. Absolutely.
Just ticking off the days.
So less is more. And I know it's said a lot, but it's just the truth, because it allows us to actually listen from within.
That's perfect, because in fact what I want to ask you is, in lovely luscious Lauren's land, how would you do school?
This is a really interesting one, because the jury's still out, and I think that it's meant to be still out. I think we're all meant to continue evolving to a point that we could never imagine right now where it's going to be in 10 years, 15 years. Because I think there's positives and negatives to everything I've seen. I don't think there's a perfect solution right now. But our children are here at this time, without a doubt, to experience this transition just the way it is. So we've got to trust. We've got to trust in the journey that they're on, but also tune in at any moment and decide if another environment's actually better for that individual child and continue moving. I'm a great example of that. My children have been in more schools than I've ever would have imagined. I mean, I'm all about stability, one school, all the things. And my children have been exposed to 6 or 7 schooling environments just because of the last few years and different different reasons that we've done that. But we will continue. What I've learned with my husband now is we will just continue to listen to our hearts all the way along, and they might go to 6 more different types of schools, and we're actually okay with that, because what I've learned is it's life learning. I'm moving away from this doctrinated thing of a child should go to the same school all the way along. Maybe they might change 2 or 3 times just because of family moves or whatever it is, but actually the learnings they've taken from every environment they've been in has just been mind-blowing. And I have had them in very different types of schools. So, and we haven't moved because, sometimes some people fly in, fly out, and their parents and all that. We've done it intuitively, but because of, I suppose, society's circumstances. And we will just continue to be on a road of exploration with schooling. And listening to our children, number one.
That's right.
If something's not working, okay, we're not going to just pull you out and just decide you can't build resilience out of it. But we do need to look at it and go, does this really suit you as a human being to keep you here,
Well, I was going to say, because we're lucky enough to know your kids, and they are great kids, and they do not look like they've suffered. It's really funny because the programming for me would have been one school only, and if you move, it's like society's breaking down.
Yeah.
We moved our kids when they were in primary school, and it felt like the biggest deal to actually do that.
Yeah.
And once I did it, I was like, oh, actually it was really fine, and it was better because they actually had a much better experience at that school, and then that led to us, pulling them out of school. But you've just recently moved one of your kids into yet another school because it was not flowing, and you could see that. And that's a really interesting place to sit as a parent and a teacher, is you had a child, you've left the other one at the original school.
Yeah.
One of your kids you pulled out.
Well, he was extremely anxious, and he was going down a road that was not him.
Yep.
And he was just out of his body, and I could see that the energy in that space was just not going to be a journey that would be helpful for his future. So we stepped him out of it.
And I think also even many parents see those decisions as being really difficult because it does throw the entire family routine out.
Yes.
And there are, some might say, sacrifices because suddenly you're choosing 2 different schools, trying to manage 2 different, locations.
Yeah, just logistics.
The logistics. So it's that change that a lot of parents go, oh, you know what, it's just too hard. So I'm sorry, even if one's not really coping, I'm just going to leave them there because as a family, that's the best decision for the family rather than the individual child's needs.
Yeah, I think so. And it's about really trusting in the evolution of the family and where everyone's going. And I think my husband and I have really come to the conclusion, I'm sure if he was here, he would agree, that as a priority, we are all on a journey to continue following the highest version of ourselves. And we're not making money be the guider of that, as much as there's some serious ego death happening in that space.
Yeah, it's a tough road.
It's a tougher one.
In 3D society, you're told you should have this and you should have this and you should have that. But, mental health is the highest it's ever been in our society right now. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of us have just lost our way. And I refuse to have ourselves in a situation where it's not in alignment with us. Like, yes, it's been really, really, really challenging, our journey, but ultimately if I look at all the individuals in our family, we're all actually doing exactly what we're meant to be doing right now. We're not forcing ourselves to be anything we're not. And I want our children to learn that they must listen to their heart if something's not in alignment, with also consideration for the resilience that they could gain from that environment. But it's the tipping point. Where do you actually choose something else?
That's right.
And it's not a resilience exercise anymore.
No, and it's going to vary based on the child exactly as
every
you said.
child is so individual, and parents have to be acutely aware and also be able to be aware of your very own trigger points. Like I do a lot of personal work on myself around, is this actually me getting anxious right now because of something that happened when I grew up? Or is this actually a consideration for my individual child that has these other needs, and I can see what, that his there's truth in what he's trying to connect with. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's I do a lot of writing. That's kind of the way that I work through things. And Katie Byron, I love her questions because it really nails on the head where we're going next. And Damien and I have done that quite a lot in the last few years. And then lovely Kerry here reminded me about that probably 4 weeks ago, and I was all on it. I was like, okay, and I did it with my husband, and within 3 minutes we resolved a massive, we could not get our head through what we were presented with, and we just did those questions and we just sorted it out in a few minutes. We just had to be in the right headspace. And it was like, okay, what's the highest value here? Okay, we're following that. Yeah.
But, so, I mean, the stuff for the people listening, so to check out Byron Katie's work, it basically is about just drilling down on whatever that sort of belief system is that you're really getting stuck over. And I think these resources are absolutely out there. But what you said, which I really want to pick up on, and which Kez and I feel really passionately about, and McGill, is about deschooling parents, because as far as I'm concerned, we're the problem. And I realise that. I mean, you hear that in a soft way where you go, your children are your mirrors and they'll be the ones to trigger you. And it's like, the kids don't trigger us. We get triggered by them. That's a very different thing to the kids triggering us. It's like saying the kids are here to test us, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
Kids are not here to test us. They're here to live because we conceived them and then grew them and then gave birth to them.
They're independent from us. Yeah.
Correct. That's right. They're not here to try and test us. They are here as a part of the life experiment to might find out where the edges are, where the cliffs are,
oh my gosh,
and whether they're going to get caught, or fall to their proverbial death, which is all part of the richness of living. But, it is inherent on us. If we want to say that we are evolved parents, we must get our own shit sorted out.
120%, just totally. And I just watch this with parents so often in the schools that I'm in. So I'm working part-time at the moment in a Steiner school. Just fascinated by my experience in general with parents and the journeys they go on with their kids right from prep right through, and how they transform. And I noticed that even with you, Kerry, you're got high school children now. And you do as well, actually, don't you? And so that you would also be aware of the transition and the letting go that takes place as the children get older and older, and the triggers that come up, and what you'll do, allow your first child to get away with versus your fourth child or your second child. And so I think what that relates to is actually the things that we've got okay within ourselves along the way. I forgot the question you actually asked. What did you actually ask me?
I don't think the question matters anyway.
I'm talking right now. I just go off on my journey. So
I will bring you back to something which was interesting that you just said, and I want to hear your perspective then as a teacher dealing with parents who don't have their shit sorted out but may actually think they're kind of on the spiritual pathway.
It is
because
so,
the only reason I say that is not to throw them under the bus.
No.
Is because I was probably one of those assholes for a while that didn't realise I actually needed to properly look in the mirror and take some radical responsibility and start farking the shoulds and doing all the things that we talk about on this podcast.
Yes.
How does a teacher who does understand radical responsibility, who does understand emotions-led learning, who does understand that children's the priority needs to be realigned to children's interests, how do you then navigate people who are sitting in that space of assessment of what you're doing in a system that's incredibly constrained and not supportive of those main things? Like, how does that work? Obviously, it's communication. But
well, this has been interesting for me because I was working interstate last year and came across quite a gnarly, insane circumstances with some parents. And I am deeply grateful for these experiences because, it's opened my mind to just the way people operate and how extreme and polarizing people are. It's just mind-blowing. So typically I'm quite a soft-natured person, but I am quite direct with what I'll say to parents, but I'll do it in a loving way to try and help them acknowledge that hey, is this you or is this actually the child? Where do we, it's not my job to be a psychologist, but obviously parents are met with this. I mean, you can average 5 to 6 emails a night. Some parents, as teachers can.
Per night?
So dealing with all of the issues.
Yeah, these
Can
teachers.
you imagine getting
as a
5
teacher,
to 6 emails a night from parents? Oh my
Yes.
God, you guys need to get a job
So
or a
what
hobby.
my concern about that is it's this worry, this kind of situation online where people just, type what they're feeling in the moment, and then it creates kind of a bit of an explosion, which doesn't have to be if everybody has time to think. Obviously things change after a couple of days. The reason I mention this 5 to 6 emails, it depends on what school you're in, of course, and the types of parents you're dealing with. The particular school I was in was a very wealthy area where a lot of the parents didn't work. So they had time to mull over what their child had told them and not be able to understand that there's a bigger cell body happening in a classroom where there's lots of moving parts, and they just think about their one child. So typically teachers can't give information about the information of every single child in a class because it's confidential. So you are just dealing with that particular connection point, and parents I feel like there's a lack of, I have a lot of compassion, first of all, I want to say, for parents, because the system is incredibly rocky right now.
Yeah.
So I can see that everyone wants the best for their child, and people are connecting with this notion that they want their child to connect with their authentic selves, and they want their child to be treated well, and they want their child to be fed this information in the right way, in the way that you've been told by your psychologist, and all these things. But I think the piece is missing that, the teacher is one person who you've got a chessboard, and it's not always possible, not actually possible, humanly possible to actually meet every single need, and you're not meant to be a robot that can do that. And I think we've lost, parents and society have lost trust in each other.
Yes, that's so true.
We've lost you've lost trust in the teacher that they recognise what's happening for your child, and actually we've lost trust in our child that they're on the journey they're meant to be on.
Yes.
And if you really do have a problem with your child being in that environment, consider taking them elsewhere or having them at home, because it's actually not fair on the class if you've got a child that's feeling the energy of their parents that are uncomfortable with the environment, and they're fighting with the teacher or they're trying to accuse the teacher, when actually there's an ethos, there's just so many complicated things going on that it's not an ABC situation that's just like 1 + 1 = 2. It's just not, because it's complex. Society is complex, isn't it? I just think that everyone just needs to calm down and trust that their child's on the journey they're meant to be on, and trust the teachers a little bit more. Because, there'd only be 0.01% of times where a teacher is actually doing something harmful to a child.
That's right.
And so we've got to actually get to know the teacher and go, okay, is this teacher here for my child's learning for the future, for their resilience, for a job they'll be involved in the future? I always think, every person that you connect with in life is a little bow or something that can teach you something for the future. But if you really don't believe in that system, then you shouldn't have your children there.
Beautiful Quanta folks. At Quantum Mama, we have a mandate that we feel so passionate about. We want and we are raising the community's vibration and frequency and consciousness through parenting and birth experiences. Such incredible, transformational experiences that will shape you as a person and are the very fabric of life. you want to find out how to high vibe your experience even more? Then Quantum Mama is your place. Head there for the High Vibe Birth course, ultimate preparation for birthing. Head there if you want to re-engage your child in the love of learning for the Take the Leap course, which is a deschooling course for parents. There's beautiful mind movies, and obviously this podcast is there, and we are here to support you. So head there for all the juice.